Yes.
And that is something we should talk more about as a country.
So Joe Rogan just exposed how the Nashville school shooter was motivated by radical trans ideology, but the media buried this story completely. We're about to dive into J.D. Vance's explosive interview where he connects the dots on woke ideology, pharmaceutical profits, and the systematic cover-up of inconvenient truths. Let's break this down.
I'm sure there's plenty of them in Austin. Like, in this house, we believe science is real. No person is legal. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know your religious background, but like I'm a convert to Catholicism. It's like was raised Christian, became an atheist, came back to Christianity, got baptized Catholic like 5 or 6 years ago. And what is so interesting about this in this house we believe is it's so similar to the creed that you declare every day at a Catholic Mass, right? We believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God. And there's almost a similar cadence between the Christian creed and what these guys are doing with this hyper woke stuff. And then there's the rallies. And then there's, of course, the various rituals. And it absolutely is a religious faith.
Vance nailed it here. Wokeism literally follows the structure of religious faith. Creeds, rituals, excommunication, but it replaced Christianity in blue America. The yard signs are secular prayer cards. This explains why rational debate fails with these people. You can't logic someone out of a religious position they didn't logic themselves into.
Because, again, they just wanted to be left the hell alone, and now you have all this crazy stuff on top of it that they're like, well, no, we didn't want to give pharmaceutical products to 9-year-olds who are transitioning their genders.
Exactly right. The original gay rights movement wanted tolerance and privacy. Now it's been hijacked by activists pushing experimental hormones on kids. Normal gay Americans see this insanity and want no part of it. The pharmaceutical lobby turned what should be acceptance into a medical marketplace targeting children.
Sometimes the profit motive can be a good thing, like we're going to develop life-saving cancer drugs. We want that to happen, right? And I'm fine with people making a big profit for that. But then sometimes they'll try to manipulate government policy to make their own drugs more profitable, not because it's good for health, but because these people just naturally, like most people, want to make some money.
Yeah.
And that conversation has totally disappeared. Like, I got into a big argument, and, you know, this person, you can read about it in the New York Times, later disavowed our friendship and leaked our text messages to the New York Times. But the breaking point was I came out against this gender transition for minors when I was running for the Senate a few years ago. And she's a transgender individual, and she kind of flipped out on me. And the thing that I never understood, because she's like very much an old school leftist, is, are you not at all a little bit worried about how rich people are getting by prescribing experimental therapeutics to 9, 10, 12-year-old kids? Like, this used to be something that the American left would have gone crazy about.
This is the smoking gun. The old left would have gone ballistic over Big Pharma targeting kids with experimental treatments for profit. Now they're silent because it serves their ideology. Follow the money. Gender clinics are billion-dollar businesses pushing irreversible procedures on confused children while parents get threatened with custody loss.
It's sort of the manual of psychiatric disorders. And I think that we're on the DSM-5, as it's called, which is the 5th edition of this manual. You have drug companies that are making money that are lobbying to have, you know, child dysphoria put into our psychiatric manuals, because then psychiatrists will treat that condition, and then those pharmaceutical companies will get rich from it. Somebody should be interrogating whether the political incentives of our country actually align with the financial incentives of the pharmaceutical industry, because oftentimes the answer is going to be no, but nobody's asking that question.
The DSM is basically pharmaceutical marketing disguised as science. They keep expanding diagnostic criteria to create more customers. Childhood phases that used to resolve naturally are now medicalized disorders requiring expensive lifelong treatments. It's the opioid crisis playbook applied to gender confusion. Create dependency, maximize profits.
100%.
Now, you could believe, okay, that there's just like something genetic going on in the mind of a wealthy white progressive, or you could believe that this is a cultural trend that we should be questioning a lot more than we are right now. And unfortunately, I mean, here's one thing that I really worry about is, okay, think about the incentives. People are very good at rationalizing things. If you are a, you know, middle class or upper middle class white parent, and the only thing that you care about is whether your child goes into Harvard or Yale, Like, obviously, that pathway has become a lot harder for a lot of upper middle class kids. But the one way that those people can participate in the DEI bureaucracy in this country is to be trans. And is there a dynamic that's going on where if you become trans, that is the way to reject your white privilege, right? That's the social signifier.
Yeah.
The only one that's available in the hyper woke mindset is if you become gender non-binary.
This is social contagion driven by college admissions. Upper-class white kids figured out that claiming trans identity is their only path to Harvard in the DEI era. It's privilege disguised as oppression. These families are literally sacrificing their children's bodies for Ivy League admission letters.
That's crazy.
And I'd actually never heard that. I mean, this is a few years ago. I'd never heard that argument before. And so I actually went and looked at it and looked at the data on this. The idea that if you give puberty delaying, puberty blockers, whatever you're going to call them, to kids who are 11, 12, 13, that that's fully reversible, that is completely and preposterously insane. Now, even the most radical advocates of trans healthcare do not say that, right? Because look, I mean, you have sexual dysfunction, you have, to your point, hair in weird places that won't go away, you have voice changes that won't go away. We are experimenting on tens of thousands of American children. We're making them miserable. It's not having any long-term health benefit. It's making a lot of pharmaceutical companies rich. And it's conservative Republicans are the only ones saying, maybe this is a little crazy. Maybe we should stop.
The fully reversible lie is finally cracking. Puberty blockers cause permanent bone density loss, sexual dysfunction, and cognitive impacts. Even European countries are backing away from this after seeing the damage. We're conducting Mengele-level experiments on American kids while calling it healthcare.
And I think this is, actually this observation is probably one of the things that led me back to my own faith. But I sort of just a fundamental background belief I have about humanity is, we're the hardware, right? We're biological organisms. We're the hardware. And the software is the ideas that we have in our head. And certain software promotes human flourishing, and certain software destroys human flourishing. And I think that the good kind of ideas tend to promote human flourishing. Most world religions have, but the woke stuff doesn't have, is forgiveness and redemption.
Yes.
Right. It has the excommunication part, but it doesn't have the forgiveness and redemption part. Most people recognize that even if you violate some fundamental moral value that I have, if you apologize and try to be a good person, we're going to be forgiving. We want people to be able to live together. There is this weird thing with the woke stuff where and you see this, and I feel bad when like comedians in particular do it. I'm sure you've seen this, but when anybody does this, where they'll go and say, well, I'm really sorry. They'll sort of prostrate themselves when they make an offensive joke or they do something they're not supposed to do, and they expect redemption. But no. They don't get forgiveness.
No.
What they get is you need to do even more of what you've already done. It becomes this self-defeating, self-flagellating cycle. And I think that's what's most destructive about this is you can't be friends with people if you think they're only ever wrong. They can only ever wrong you.
Yeah.
And if they apologize, your response is not to say, oh, okay, I accept your apology. If your response is to say, no, I want you to apologize even more and even harder, that destroys human civilization.
This is why wokeism destroys civilization. Traditional religions offer redemption after sin. Christianity, Judaism, Islam all have forgiveness pathways. Wokeism only offers permanent damnation. Once you're labeled racist or transphobe, there's no coming back. It makes human cooperation impossible.
Not only does she actively brag, and has her administration actively bragged about trying to arrest her political opponents, she will go out and say that if Donald Trump is the president, he's going to arrest his political opponents, even though he already was president and he didn't do that.
Classic projection. Harris's DOJ prosecuted Trump, raided Mar-a-Lago, indicted him 4 times, and imprisoned January 6th protesters. Meanwhile, Trump had 4 years as president and never weaponized justice against Democrats. Yet she claims he's the threat to democracy. It's gaslighting on steroids.
No, but should they be stripped of their security clearance? Absolutely, I do. Right? They lied. They used their position of authority and lied to the American people about something that was in the national interest. If there are no consequences for that, then what are we doing?
Those 51 intelligence officials interfered in a presidential election by lying about Hunter's laptop. They use their security clearances to deceive voters right before the election. If there's no accountability for election interference by the deep state, then democracy is already dead.
Yeah, so what President Trump has said, and what I've said, is abortion is now a matter for state legislatures, state voters to determine. And one, that's always what the argument was, right? If Roe versus Wade goes away, then the state legislatures, the state populations are going to make each individual abortion decision the same way that, California has different laws on a whole host of subjects than Alabama does. The idea is that, California would make its own abortion policy, Alabama would make its own abortion policy. And so there's a basic sort of principle of federalism at work there. But I also think that, knowing Donald Trump well, I think he's motivated also by a desire for us to just stop having a culture war over this particular issue and to let the voters in these states make these decisions while the national government focuses on things like lowering the cost of groceries and lowering the cost of housing and securing the southern border. And I think there's actually some great wisdom in that because, think about this. Abortion has not really been a political issue for 50 years. Now, we say that it is, and obviously we disagreed about it and people fought about it. It was always something the Supreme Court said, this is the way it is. There's no political decision making. Every European nation has made abortion policy democratically. And that's what Donald Trump is saying. Do what every European nation has done. Let the voters decide what their abortion policy is going to be. And we're going to focus the national government on different things. And I say this as somebody who, I genuinely, want people to choose life. And I'm, a big believer in families. And I think, having children has been like a revelatory experience for me. And I want our country to be more pro-family, more pro-child. I think there are all these things that we can do at the federal level to make our country more pro-family and more pro-child, make childcare easier, I've actually sponsored legislation to stop the surprise medical bills that happen when people, and I've seen this with my own wife, you go to the hospital, you come home, you've got a beautiful baby, but you've also got a $20,000 unexpected bill because you choose the wrong out-of-network healthcare provider when you're at the moment of delivering a baby. Like, there are all these things we can do to make it easier for young women, young families to choose life. But Donald Trump, I think, wants abortion policy, and he said this explicitly, to be decided at the state level.
Smart strategy. Let states decide abortion while focusing on kitchen table issues that unite Americans. Inflation, immigration, crime. These affect everyone regardless of party. Trump learned that endless culture wars distract from the economic populism that actually wins elections.
Think about this. If you've got millions of illegal aliens, okay, let me tell you a story. In 2017, 2018, when I was in the private sector, I was at a business conference dinner, and I was seated next to the CEO of one of the largest hotel chains in America. This is, I think, probably 2018. And the guy is going on and on about how much he hates Donald Trump. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Like, why do you hate Donald Trump so much? Because again, I was sort of a Trump skeptic in 2015, and at this point, I was kind of starting to really get on the Trump train. And he said, well, the reason I hate Donald Trump, he says, is because Donald Trump's border policies have cut down the number of illegal immigrants. And because I can't pay illegal immigrants under the table anymore, I have to pay American workers, and they want much higher wages. And I was like, this guy just admitted it. I was like, holy shit, this guy just admitted it.
Now, a crime.
That is like straight up monopoly man evil shit that this guy admitted to. And I was like, my wife, who's very apolitical, she was actually at the dinner with me, and she's like, come again? You just said you don't want Americans to get decent wages. Like, that is the best argument for Donald Trump's immigration policy, is that American workers are getting higher wages, and this is why this corporate CEO hates it. So whatever the industry is, you've got a lot of people who want cheap labor, and they don't want to pay American workers higher wages.
This CEO accidentally revealed the entire game. Corporate America loves illegal immigration because it suppresses wages and breaks unions. They get cheap labor while claiming moral superiority. It's exploitation disguised as compassion. They're using both illegal immigrants and American workers
to vote. They want to legalize them. They want to make it easier for them to participate in our elections. And that means fundamentally the end of American democracy. Because you're talking about 25 million people here. If Kamala Harris gives 10 million of those people legal status and allows them to vote in American elections, then, say 70-30, they go Democrat, Republicans will never win a national election in this country in my lifetime.
The Great Replacement isn't a conspiracy theory when Democrats openly discuss it. Import 25 million illegal immigrants, give them voting rights, and Republicans never win nationally again. It's not about compassion. It's about permanent political power through demographic engineering.
Confident. It is close, but I am confident because it's close, but it's close in a way that favors us, right? The undecided voters tend to be voters who are more aligned with us. I think the early voting data looks really good. I think that, people just fundamentally don't want to do more of the same, and Kamala Harris is more of the same. I think some of our arguments that Kamala Harris is the is the candidate of censorship is starting to really break through. But, to your listeners, if you agree with what I've said here, get out there and vote, because there is something to be said for me and Donald Trump actually sat and had a conversation, and hopefully I didn't make a complete fool of myself, but they just don't do that. Right? Why would we make a person who's terrified of talking about what she wants to do and what she believes, why would we make her a president of the United States? The only way to make that not happen is to vote for me and Trump on or before November the 5th. So it's very important. I feel good about it, but I don't feel great about it because there are a lot of ways in which Democrats are going to try to motivate their base down the stretch. There are a lot of ways in which, I wouldn't put it past them. Maybe they do try to cheat. I don't know exactly what it looks like in 5 or 6 days, but I know that the best thing that we can do to prevent that from happening is to get out there, make our voices heard.
Perfect contrast. Trump and Vance do 3-hour unscripted conversations, while Kamala hides behind teleprompters and scripted town halls with pre-selected questions. If you can't defend your ideas in real time, you shouldn't be president. Competence matters when nuclear weapons are involved.